All right, Benji, Brady, we are back for another episode.
Back at it.
Part 2 of In My Business to Know My Business.
Yep.
So,
Adam, I make it my
my
business
I
and
make-
know
well,
my
I know
business.
that,
You got
but
it wrong.
I understand.
Weren't you just here last week?
I understand the slogan, but you also have to think when I title this episode, that's a
Oh.
really long title. So I have to figure out.
But it's the right title.
You're 100%
Is it,
right.
is it too long?
But it'll be too long for
Okay.
the thumbnail that I make. I said, I don't know if I can fit that much on a screen.
SEO won't like us too
Yeah.
much.
Yeah.
So yes, but we're jumping back in. We're getting back into some two-parters. So
Yep.
glad to be back in.
I like the two-parters.
I'm
I'm kind of
like,
partial
we
to the
know.
two-parters. Yeah, I'm kind of partial to the two-parter.
I like them. It's a lot of good information. So what we're gonna do is just kind of jump right back in to where we were on the last episode. It was such a great topic. We had a lot of good talking points, things that we kind of went through that you guys were sharing. But what we want to jump back in right in today is we're talking about biblical foundation.
Yep.
So a little bit about that. So kind of jump in, Brady. Let listeners know a little bit about what that means in terms of this topic that we're talking about.
Yeah, so just a very quick recap. I mean, this whole series is about our dad, our
Yep.
father, who passed in 2017. He was our hero. He was our mentor in so many different areas, but, we wanted to kind of dedicate a series of our podcast to him. And so we've come up with like all these phrases that we remember. I mean, we were just talking about it before the show, but Adam and I were meeting about something yesterday, and one popped in my. I said, I gotta write that down.
Well, there's
You
so
know,
many you
And
can't
then
remember
you're
them all.
like,
You
well,
know.
let me add this to the list of 27 other ones.
Right.
Yeah.
So this may be multi-series. I don't know.
No, it's maybe 3 seasons.
Maybe.
Hey, it's great information.
Yeah, for sure.
It's good
Yeah.
for people to hear. So
So what we talked about last episode was I'm making my business to know my business. And our dad was a student of what he did. There was never a time that I can remember that you wouldn't ask him a question, and he would say, oh yeah, blah 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 blah. And I'm like, how do you know that? And that's what he would say is, son, I make it my business to know my business, which we kind of dove into. This was a John D. Rockefeller quote. And, he was one of the titans of America and oil business, and started Standard Oil and all these things. And he was just a student of his business. So he made it his business to know his business, and not necessarily didn't rely on other people, because you have to when you're in a leadership position, but you don't want to be so far removed that you become unaware of, what the business is actually doing.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a tension we live in as leaders, because we've got to keep growing. We got to keep learning. We got to keep adapting. We got to continue to be agile, but we don't want to remove ourselves from the information. So if we don't understand it, one of our core values is data wins, which used to be data drives decisions.
Mhm.
But if you don't have the right data, then you could make a bad decision. So I think it all ties into I'm making my business to know my business, even though that won't fit on the episode title,
I promise
which
you
is
I'll
okay.
make it work. Just trust the
Yeah.
process.
Okay, all right, trust the process. I'm not involved
Coming
in
in
that part
hot.
of it, but
Coming in hot with Claude.
yeah, there you go. So what we want to do is take a step back. In this episode is, we talked about our father, we talked about the origin of the quote, but like, is there a biblical foundation to what this phrase means? I'm making my business to know my business. So I'm going to look at a couple verses today, and then we'll kind of talk through that and then wrap the episode up. But first one, it comes out of Proverbs 27:23, and it says, know well the conditions of your flock and give attention to your herds. Okay. So we talked about last time, this is about stewardship. Like a lot of the things you see in the Bible, I don't know that, I mean, I'd have to go back and look, and some of our pastors may be listening to me. Maybe we'll get some comments, but how much does he talk about ownership versus management or stewardship?
Mm-hmm.
And so when we look at this, if we're going to become a good steward of our business or our family or our finances, then you want to become a good student before you become a good steward. And so that helps what these businesses are, and it helps you understand it better so that you can make better decisions.
Yeah.
And when you look at the Bible, and I don't know the Hebrew word for what this is talking about, but the understanding of the meaning of it is having really an intimate knowledge of what God has given you.
Mm-hmm.
So just think about that for a minute, and maybe ask yourself the question, do you have an intimate knowledge of your business? Do you know, or your organization? Could be a church, could be a 501c3, whatever the case may be. But what do you guys think about that? Like knowing your flocks and what this verse is kind of telling us.
I think you have to know, obviously, um, if you, the, I remember Brady one time, he showed us a stat in a meeting that most businesses never get past the $1 million threshold or in revenue.
Yeah.
And the reason why they don't is because it's usually a single operator who, had a job out in the workforce, and they wanted to be an entrepreneur, and they wanted to try to, own their own company. But what happened was, as they grow their company, they get to that $1 million mark, and they don't want to relinquish some of the control or duties, so to speak, of to their team, and bring on people, because that's additional expense, that's additional overhead, that's additional, insurance, whatever those things are. And he showed us that stat, and he said, now, if a company can get, I don't know where he got this chart from. By the way, he didn't come up with a lot of this stuff himself.
Nah.
He studied. He
Yep.
like you said, he made it his business to know his business. There was a study that showed if you want to get from $1 to $3 million, I want to say it was, then they brought on this specific role in their company. If they went from 3 million to 10 million, it jumps quick.
That's right.
And then when you get to the, say, $10 million revenue company, it starts to level out again until you bring in main leader, like additional leadership roles in your company. And then it goes to 20 million. It just continues to grow. And so I think that, to your point with how does this calling work, you have to know not only your business, you have to know your people, you have to know your processes, you have to know your financials. I mean, we have done a lot of profit and loss and balance sheet review with franchise, teams, company. And honestly, I've done them. I'm sure you have done them with companies outside of even the industry that we're in.
Yeah.
And most of the people don't even know what their profit and loss statement or balance sheet even shows.
That's right.
And so you got to know what you're doing. How do you pay down your debt? How do you go out and become more profitable? How do you add additional service lines? So make it your business to know your business is not just, learning the trade that you're doing. It's all the other things that go with it. Not that you can be a master of everything.
Right.
There's another quote actually.
There you go.
Not that you can be a master of everything, because you can't do everything at the same time. But you can have enough knowledge to know enough about the company that you can be effective to those around you.
That's right.
Yeah. Well, I think it's also a mindset thing. You have to think through that. Something that I share with our team all the time at the church is be respectful of the things that we have, not just the equipment, the things that the church purchases, but the opportunities we have.
For
right?
sure.
And so one of the things that I bring up to them all the time is, hey, when you're on the clock and you're here working, like I understand that we have community, we talk, we do things, but be mindful of that. Be mindful of when you're clocked in. Be mindful of when you're there, when you're not, because you also have to be very considerate to think about when you're here working, that's someone's time.
Absolutely.
And it's our job to do exactly what you're talking about,
Steward
Brady, is
that.
to steward that.
Yep.
And
That's
and
good.
I always want them to be mindful of that and say, think about those things. Like when you're like, oh, I want this and I want to do that, or even those moments where maybe you're kind of just sitting around and you're taking a break for something, or you clock in early, clock in late, like just small things. I'm like, be mindful that could have been someone's last tithe for the month. Like that could have been someone that they gave when they didn't have anything to give. And so just always be mindful of those things when we're doing that at the church. And I try to keep our team, have that on the forefront, that when you're doing the work you're doing, you have the opportunity to do it because someone believed in the ministry and the purpose and the principle and the mission of this church.
Yeah.
And it's coming from their own pockets to say, all right, I'm going to fund to give the opportunity to do this. And I think that could be the same thing for employees. Something that I always try to do when I work with the two of you guys is be mindful that it's not my money. Like, yes, I'm there and we buy equipment and we've done things. At the end of the day, you guys are entrusting us to spend the money that you're making as owners to make the company continue to work. We have to be mindful of that. It doesn't matter if that's what we're spending when we're on a trip, or making sure that we're choosing the cheapest flight or different things. Just being mindful of that and not taking advantage of that opportunity. Because I feel like a lot of corporate world you see where like, oh, it's just corporate money, spend it.
Yeah.
Yes, but also it's coming from someone who's invested not just financially,
sure.
but time into that. So
Yeah. No, that's good.
I think that's what God calls us to do, and we have to be mindful of that when it comes into stewardship with those things.
Yeah, because when you're managing something for somebody else, you just treat it different. You really do, you know. And I think, man, I'm about to go on a soapbox here, but not off script a little bit. But you know, we have so many people that feel like they're entitled to things, and so when you get into that entitlement mentality, it's like, oh, it's mine, 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 mine. It's just different. That's not really what God called us to do, even as Christians. But well, one example we can pull, you know, out of Scripture is which one of my favorite leaders in the Bible is Nehemiah, and you know, the Israelites were in captivity, and you know, he was called to go and rebuild the wall. Well, you know, when you look at the Scripture, when he went out, God actually asked him, like, when you go survey the damage, you know, and he actually went out at night, you know, with himself or with a few people, but he actually looked at, you know, okay, what is it that we have to do, and I need to come up with a plan and then gather the people around that plan. So he was one that really modeled, you know, what it means to make it my business to know my business, and then obviously the greatest leader of all time, Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
But you know, in Luke 14:28, he says, "For which of you desiring to build a tower does not first sit down and count the cost?" Well, how do you count the cost? You have to understand what goes into the cost, you know. And there's so many different areas that this verse could go, but I think from this perspective, you know, from a leadership perspective, you know, we need to understand what it is before we kind of go into it. So, you know, really the key thing here is think about and maybe this is something even for me, I know, speaking of specifically, but think about the business that God gifted you.
100%.
This business, he gave you this business. It's not something that you did, you know, it's the abilities and the talents
Or position that you're in.
or
And
position that,
skill,
yeah.
I mean, I was just about to say, I'm glad you said that. I was going to say, like, your skill set, like the things that you have to do. There's people around you in your circle that are like, man, I wish I had the ability to do that. And it's not your gifting, but yeah, I mean, even just your skill set that allows you to be in that position to work for that guy. So it's just this never ending circle.
Yeah. I remember, it's funny you have on here, Brady, talking about how did Dad handle these situations. He would always ask us a question that he already knew the answer to.
Oh, 100%.
And he was like,
That sounds so familiar right now.
Yeah. He would say something like, "Hey, what does that say our cost should be in that category?" You know, making this up. And I don't know. He go, $100. Where'd you come up with that? He said, I already looked it up. I already knew. So to your point, he already knew the answer.
He just wanted you to know the answer.
That's exactly right.
How many times yesterday in our meeting when we were sitting there talking about just some of our Google strategy, how many of those questions that you asked me did you already know answers to?
You know,
I
you
literally
never know.
thought that. Well, I'm glad you said that, because I thought that during the meeting yesterday. I'm like, he already knows the answer to this.
But the reason for that is, and I think we learned this from our dad, is it's great that he knew the answer.
Yeah.
But if he was the only one that knew the answer, that's not really good for the organization.
Yeah.
You know, me and my wife are having this conversation right now with one of our kids, is like, if I just give them the answer, you know, then how is that really teaching them,
Of course,
as opposed to helping them to discover?
Yeah.
It's okay that, because I mean, I've been through a lot of life. I've been through a lot of circumstances. I've been through a lot of, and I mentor several people. But if I just say, you know, well, here's what you need to do to fix it, you know, are they really going to learn from that? And it, you know, so that, I think that's one of the reasons he did it. He's like, yeah, he knew it, but he wanted to teach you how to not only to know the information, but where to go look for the information.
And you guys tell me if you disagree. I feel like it's okay to not know the answer. I know for me as an employee of the two of y'all, and then having people that work for me now, I get stressed when I get asked a question that you know the answer to that I don't know the answer to. But working with people, I'm trying to help those individuals that work for me now in our creative department. Like, I just want you to think a little differently. Like, think outside the box, because yes, it's okay. I'm with them. I'm like, it's okay if you don't have the answer to this, or that you may say something different. I just want you to think more than just like you're just posting, or you're just snapping a photo, or getting a video, or however we're presenting.
Yeah.
I want you to think through it as a team, so we can work this together. So the next time when this comes up, you're like, I already know the answer to this.
Yeah. No, that's good. So just kind of close out this particular section, but it's kind of a weird question to ask, but I think it's good to take an inventory or take an account. But if God asked you today to give an account for the health of your organization, the people, the culture, the finances, all that stuff, how would your scorecard look?
Yeah.
That's a good question.
Kind of an open-ended question. It's kind of humbling, actually. I need to go back and do that for us and see what that looks like. But where we want to kind of shift gears a little bit is, we talked a lot about this topic last week, kind of dove into it this week. But now, how do we actually get a practical application? We record this on Wednesday. The episodes typically come out on Monday. Yeah. So on Monday morning, like when you're listening to this, how do you actually take this and put it to work? And so we're just going to give you some good practical steps, and there's probably more that we could talk about, but these are just some that we kind of came up with. So, excuse me, how can you know your business?
Mm-hmm.
And for sometimes like me, I need to get out of the quote unquote ivory tower and go walk around, go talk to some people, like go sit in a meeting that maybe 10 years ago I actually led that meeting, but I don't lead that meeting anymore. So I've got and maybe there's an expectation of what that meeting should look like, but if I haven't been in that meeting for a while, I don't know, for us, and maybe going to look at the warehouse, just seeing how the place looks. Or so what is it for the practical, what is it for you as maybe a business leader to go and not 100% of your week, because we've got other things to do, leading an organization or leading a team. But what does that look like? If you're a pastor, maybe that means go be a part of a small group. See what the actual small group is doing. I mean, you've got expectations of what that looks like.
Yeah.
But and I'm sure there's some other ways, or go have some coffee with some folks and how's it going, and things that we can do to improve. But I mean, what do you guys see? Like, give us some practical application of make it my business to know my business.
Yeah, I would say, exactly what you said. I think this is probably another quote that he got from someone, which, again, it's interesting. We talk about these quotes. We may have 50 episodes on this at some point, but you can't inspect what you don't expect.
Yeah.
And it's like,
write it down.
How do we, you're right. You think you go back, leaders, as you've been growing in your journey at wherever your job is or what have you, that did I do it? Are they, is the person that I pass this down to doing it the way that I did it? Or are they doing it within the same framework that I did it, putting their own twist to it? Or are they just doing it their own way?
Yeah.
So you have to be able to go out and, it's hearing you say that, kind of thinking to myself, I wonder if we do it that way anymore,
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that it sometimes we get stuck in habits. Sometimes we get, just same old. I was talking to an owner outside of our industry the other day, and they were like, man, I'm struggling with my company. I need some help. Would you give me some coffee time? I'm like, yeah. And it was 2:30 in the afternoon. He was like,
that's a good time for coffee.
Yeah. You know what?
Once a cup a day person.
Hey, I got a dad joke from Brady.
Uh-oh.
Gosh. You know what, the Chinese man, what time he went to the dentist?
Oh, I know.
I don't, and I wish I did.
Can I answer?
Go ahead.
2:30.
But okay. Anyway,
people listening are gonna be like, "What just happened?"
That's a dad joke for Adam. So, you get in that framework, that mindset, of trying to figure out, are they doing it the same way that it's always been done, or do we get stuck? I was talking to this guy, and he's like, "Yeah, I'm struggling with my company, and I can't figure out why my revenue won't grow." And I was like, I hear a lot of noise in the background. Where are you at? It's 2:30 in the afternoon. He said, I'm at the gym. I was like, well, that's part of your problem.
Did you tell him that right then and there?
No, I was thinking this in my mind. I was like, well, that's part of the problem right there. I mean,
bro, you might need to be at the office.
I get now. Wait a minute. Do you have a client with you you're working out with? I mean, that's one thing.
Well,
so anyway,
great marketing plan right there.
To your point, it's
work out the gym with a client.
Just you're not going to change things just because. Yeah. I mean, you gotta go inspect it. You gotta have expectations. Hold people accountable. You got to know the business. If you don't know the business, you can't know how to respond. If you don't, you can't grow your business if you're not trying to act on growing the business.
Yeah.
So that'd be what I would say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know I'm in a season right now where I'm trying to figure out where that line is on handing stuff. I've got a girl that works for me as my social media coordinator. She does a really good job. She's very good with social. I just watching her progress in her photography. She's starting to do a little bit of video. We work together, and she tells me all the time, "Let me edit this, let me edit this, let me edit that." And I try to tell her, I'm like, "Well, I still want to do some of it, so I keep that up. Like I want to make sure,
Keep it fresh.
keep it fresh. Like I
Yeah.
want to be inside.
Yeah.
If I don't, I don't want to step out of something and then not get content because we're kind of moving into that situation now where things are growing. Like, am I about to start taking over communications? Because we don't have anybody that's handling that, and that's an important thing. Where emails are being sent from 5 different platforms.
Yeah.
All right, we got to hone this in. So there's a lot that's going on from an administrative side, and I don't want it to pull me out of the hands-on side. But then also, I'm trying to think through being in my department and knowing my department. I also need to realize too, I've got to relinquish some of those things because there's no way she's going to learn to do them. Like our recap reels, we do something a little different. We post message recaps every Monday, but we don't pull it from the live stream. We film them from the ground. So we actually go with the pastors kind of mark in their message. We talk about it on Sunday mornings. Really preach like, hey, this is a place that I would think would be good. A lot of times it's like, how do we want to communicate to our congregation? Like, what's the point this week I want them to think about? And so we actually record those moments from the ground, and then we later edit those together. And she's like, "Hey, I want to learn to do that. I want to learn to do it." And so it's one of those things where it's like,
You 100% build a Claude code for that.
well, no, I do that. I promise you, I do. What's nice is we hone it in.
Yeah.
So I record. They tell me kind of where they want it. So I record a few minutes before, a few minutes after, and then I go in. I can turn it down instead of doing the whole message.
Yeah.
It's just been much better.
Yeah, it looks
And it's
cleaner
higher
too.
quality. It's cleaner. But she wants to learn that. And there's a part of me that wants to teach her that, but then also I don't want to relinquish that. But I also do it because it allows me to still
Right.
be doing those things. But then also it's like, as well as telling you, that's where I figure that line is like, all right, where do I relinquish some of those things so she can now learn?
Yeah.
Because she needs to be in it as well.
Yeah. No, that's good. Good stuff. So as we kind of wrap up today, what is when we think about our dad, we think one word comes to mind, this legacy. I think it's in Proverbs 22. It says a good man leaves a inheritance to his children's children,
Yeah.
and that doesn't necessarily mean financial inheritance, but that means wisdom and knowledge and example and things of that nature. But when we think of this principle of I'm making my business to know my business, it's not that we're saying know everything.
Correct.
That's not really the point of this whole thing, but it's know enough. It's kind of like know enough to be dangerous,
Mhm.
to some degree. And I'm not saying that in a bad way, but know enough to where you can ask the right questions.
Yeah, that's a good.
Because if you don't know the right questions to ask, like if you don't know your business, then you're not going to know those questions that you need to ask to dive in to discern what is right or wrong or good or bad, or, you may just be getting fed information and go, yeah, that sounds good, and not really go, whoa, no. Because I do this all the time. It's like, I don't know about that. Something doesn't, I don't know what it is.
All too well.
I don't know what it is, but it feels off, and so if you don't know your business, then and it's hard to do that. So what we're asking, and this will be another episode, leaders or learners, but at some point in time, 28 weeks down the road. But the wise,
Especially if we have 15 parts to it.
well, that's true. But the wisest people in the room are the ones that continue to learn.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The wisest people in the room are the ones that continue to study.
Yeah.
And so all we're asking you guys to do is be a good, student of your business. So, here's kind of the challenge, and I'll let you guys wrap it up. But, the challenge for every leader, and I'd use that very specifically because all of you guys are leaders.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. You are a leader. Every place that you go, everything that you do, whether you think so or not, you are leading something. You're leading yourself, you're leading others. But decades from now, what do you want people to remember about you?
Yeah.
You know, what kind of legacy do you want to leave? Do you just want to be a blip, you know? Or do you want to say you want people to remember you as, man, that person was a godly man, a godly woman, you know, somebody that was a student of what they did. And so that's a challenge for me, is to, you know, decades down the road, at least for my family and whoever else. But, you know, what kind of legacy am I leaving?
I said that to somebody the other day, and I understand a lot of the things that I do when it comes to creative media is built for socials. But I told somebody the other day, and I was like, I don't want to say this the wrong way or make it sound like I hate what I do, but I don't want to create social media my entire life. Like
Mm.
I don't want social media to be. I want to create stories and impactful or capture impactful stories and create pieces, whether that's for what we're doing here at SerPro or for the church, that have a shelf life,
Yeah.
that sit, that it's like the video that you talked about in the
Yeah.
last episode for your dad, and that corporate made for him. And think about how impactful, like, it doesn't matter how long ago it was filmed, you can still watch it today and feel an impact of his legacy and what he left, whether that's from the interview from you guys, the interview from the people at corporate office at the time. Those, for me, you're just talking about legacy. I literally put that on my eval the other day, is I don't want my legacy to be what I created for socials. I want my legacy to be the stories that we tell of the people at the church. And because those stories have an impact, and when those stories have an impact, it helps bring people to Jesus, or it gives them involved. Like
Yep.
even doing things that, whether it's your next steps classes or something like that, I just want to create pieces that connect people to Jesus and create a lifelong relationship with them. To me, that's much more impactful than a post that goes viral for a little bit.
For sure.
Like that.
Yeah. That's good.